All right, let's dive right in. We're about to look at a very familiar story, but, well, we're gonna see it through a completely new and, frankly, fascinating lens. What if a simple fishing tale was never about fishing at all? What if it was actually a set of instructions for the human mind? So, the scene is one you might already know. Jesus finds his disciples. They've been out all night fishing and have caught absolutely nothing. Zero. They're frustrated, they're tired, and he gives them this one simple, very specific instruction. And this instruction leads to what's been known for centuries as the miraculous catch. We're going to start with this version of the story, the one you probably think you know, the one that on the surface is a pretty straightforward miracle. So just as the story goes, the disciples listen to him. They cast their nets over the right side of the boat and bam! All of a sudden, their nets are absolutely overflowing, so packed with fish they can barely drag them back to the shore. It's a classic story of abundance. But then we get this one really weird detail, and this is where the mystery really kicks in. The text doesn't just say, they caught a ton of fish. No, it specifies this exact kind of random-sounding number, 153. And that brings us to the whole point here, the number itself. I mean, why not 150? Why not just say about 150? For centuries, people have been scratching their heads about this. Well, according to the source material we're digging into, this number isn't just a random detail. It is the absolute key to unlocking a much deeper meaning. And that's the question that just hangs in the air, right? Why get so specific? Was this just a fisherman with a really good memory? A random fact that got stuck in the story? Or was it a clue? A deliberate breadcrumb left there to point to something else entirely. So the source material we're exploring puts forward this pretty radical idea, one that completely flips the story on its head. The core argument is simple. He wasn't talking about literal fish. The whole thing, the whole story, it's a metaphor. Now, to get this interpretation, we have to kind of cast a different kind of net ourselves. We have to be willing to shift our whole way of thinking from the literal story about a boat on a lake to a symbolic one about fishing inside our own mind. So here's how the source breaks it down with this direct symbolic map. On one side, you have the literal story, casting a net to the right side of the boat. But in this interpretation, that becomes an instruction to access the right hemisphere of the brain. And the literal fish, well, they're not animals anymore. They're reimagined as these incredible moments of insight, or what the source calls glimpses of higher consciousness. You see how this completely moves the whole story? It goes from being an external event out on the water to a totally internal one. The direction isn't about north, south, east, or west. It's psychological. An inner direction, into the landscape of the human mind. So from this point of view, the disciples weren't just being told where to find dinner. They were being taught a technique. The instruction to cast to the right side was actually a mental command, a key to unlock a whole different way of seeing the world, one that we often associate with things like creativity, intuition, and big picture thinking. And this is what they were really fishing for. Not protein, but perspective. This idea of a higher consciousness just means getting beyond our normal, everyday analytical mind. It's about tapping into a state of deeper awareness, a state that this interpretation says lives in the right side of the brain. And that means the 153 fish aren't fish at all. In this view, every single one of them represents a moment of pure insight, an aha moment. Each one is a unique idea caught from this elevated state of mind. The great catch wasn't about feeding their bodies. It was about totally illuminating their minds. Which brings us right back to that weird number. The source says this is even more proof. If you just take the digits of 153, you've got 1 plus 5 plus 3. You get 9. And in a lot of different traditions, numerology, esoteric thought, the number 9 is a huge deal. It often stands for things like completion, wisdom, and spiritual fulfillment. Okay, so let's just put all the pieces together here. In a nutshell, the theory is this. This was never a story about fishing. It's a coded guide. Cast the net to the right means activate your intuitive right brain. Catching fish means receiving these profound insights. And the number 153? That's the symbolic signature, the proof of a successful and complete spiritual harvest. And really, the biggest takeaway here is this total reframing of the story. What looks like a simple, ancient miracle story is suddenly transformed into this timeless psychological teaching, an instruction manual for accessing a different part of your very own consciousness. So, if this one short little story can be decoded in such a profound way, it just leaves you with this amazing question, doesn't it? What other ancient stories, myths, and bits of wisdom that we've always taken for granted might be holding similar hidden instructions, just waiting for us to figure out how to cast our own nets on the right side?